WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Tuesday morning. I've been looking forward to this next interview ever since finding out about it. Dr. Mark Pitstick is our guest, and he has an interesting book to talk about. It's called Soul Proof, Compelling Evidence. You are an infinite spiritual energetic being. You are, I am, we all are. Dr. Pitstick is the executive producer of the Soul Proof documentary. He's a clinical psychologist. He's certified in past life regression therapy and after death contact technique, and he's a pastoral counselor and an author, and I don't want to say anything more. I want to be all ears on this one, Robin. Good morning, Dr. Mark Pitstick. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Larry and Robin.
Thank you so much for being on the air with us. This is a fascinating topic.
It is. It's really too good to be true, but it is true, and there's lots and lots of clinical, scientific evidence to document that no one really dies. Death is an illusion.
So how do we... See, here's the thing that I've often... I mean, sometimes I'll have a dream about somebody who's passed away, and I'll wake up, and it's like I was really with them, and it's very comforting. Usually, I can't think of an example where it's not comforting, actually, but that's about it for me. I can't really, and it feels like, okay, my mind was making believe, and now I'm in the real world again. And am I maybe contacting people without knowing it?
Quite possibly, especially since you had the comfort, Larry. Those are called after-death contacts, ADCs for short. Over 75 million Americans have had an ADC, including 25% of the general population, 66% of widows and widowers, and a full 75% of parents whose little ones have passed. And so one way that those Earth will encounter their departed loved ones is by dreams when their minds are quiet and receptive.
When you say that we're eternal, does that mean we come back? Is reincarnation part of this discussion?
Well, it looks like it. When I was 10 years old, I was sitting in our Lutheran church and listening to the minister talk about someday we'll all be in heaven and we'll be walking on golden streets and playing golden harps. And even at that young age, I remember thinking, well, wouldn't that get old after a while?
Yeah, me too. I thought the same thing. I mean, a harp is nice, but that's it.
So just as we on Earth enjoy reading different books, watching different movies, vacationing different places like sunny Florida, likewise, we as eternal beings enjoy different times and places, different experiences, and thus the idea behind reincarnation, that we live not just one but many lives amidst eternity. It's too short of an interview to debate it, and I know there's a debate here. So for those of you who want to debate it, I just allow us to just talk about it and give it the benefit of the doubt, because I have questions about it that will only can be asked if we just accept it, at least for the sake of this conversation. Okay. So do we, in your opinion, and you've done some studies, so maybe you can back it up with whatever you've looked at, do we choose or are we assigned the life experiences? Yeah, we live in a free will universe, Larry, and if God made us perfect, for example, then we'd be little robots, little automatons, and so we do have the ability to choose, and that's how we grow and we differentiate between how we should be and how we shouldn't. It's like little kids learn how to walk by crawling and falling down a lot. So yes, the soul proof evidence indicates that we do choose. For example, before we come to this life on Earth, a soul will look at, okay, well, I need to grow in compassion and patience, perhaps. What kind of experiences would help me do that? Now, that doesn't mean that every detail of life is preordained, or otherwise, again, we'd be robots, puppets. Yeah. But it does mean that we set out some big goals. For example, in my 40 years of working with tens of thousands of patients, I've interviewed people who were paralyzed, people who were raped, and they said, looking back 10, 20, 30 years later, they wouldn't change it if they could, because they realize all the opportunities they're in for growing and serving others.
That is pretty interesting. Yeah. So you are, let's see, the after-death contact technique, is that something you can do? Or is it at will, or is it like with me with my dreams? It just happens and I don't even know how to control it.
Well, first of all, the technique is something that Dr. Raymond Moody came up with. I just interviewed him on my show last week. Most people know Dr. Moody from his book, Life After Life. He was one of the pioneers in near-death experiences. He wrote his first book in 1975. Well, he also wrote the book Reunions, which he describes what's called a psychomantium, basically a device that's been used since antiquity. They used it in the Greeks' days. And it's a way to facilitate an after-death contact. And so readers who want to learn more about that can read the book, but his book Reunions. But short of that, I've found that many people now are getting these after-death contacts. And first of all, they can ask for it. They can say, hey, I'm open to it. Please give me some contact. Secondly, they can start getting on the same wavelength as those in spirit world. In other words, in spirit world, the energy is more peaceful, harmonious, loving. Well, same way we need to be in that same wavelength. So meditation, time in nature, and so on help assist that. And next, I encourage a person just to continue a dialogue. If you have a departed loved one, continue to talk to them. I do with my dad, who passed on a few years ago. And that helps us get then that our loved ones who have passed on are not a trillion miles away. They're very close to us. It's just that most people can't see them because of their higher, finer energy vibration.
You talk about the here and now in your book, and when tragedy happens, the person that the tragedy has happened to should allow themselves to accept help from others, and to accept the fact that people that really love them are going to be gathered around them to try to do whatever it is they can to get that person through a difficult time.
That's exactly right, Robin. That's the first step of dealing with tragedies, and if we live long enough, we're all going to encounter them. And so the first thing is just like the old Bill Withers song, Lean on Me, lean on your one. Right. Secondly is being good to yourself, taking some time, get enough rest, eat healthily, exercise, spend some time, like I said, in nature and prayer, and be around loved ones who will support you. And then with that foundation, most people can start to glimpse then what I mentioned earlier, that there are blessings, just like the saying, there's a silver lining to every cloud. It's true, there are blessings even in tragedies. I'll give you one quick example. A friend of mine, Reverend Geraldine Murray, told me when she was 75 years old that when she was 15, she was raped by an uncle, incestuous rape, and as a result of that became pregnant. Now, back then, they didn't believe the children, so she was thrown out by her family, and here she is on the streets, 15 years old, pregnant, nowhere to go, and black. You know, a tough situation in the 1930s. So she said, now looking back at it 45 or 60 years later, I wouldn't change it if I could, because it made me reach down deep. It made me realize how strong I am, and I've been able to help so many more people because of that adversity I experienced as a teenager.
Did she keep the baby?
She did, yes, and the baby grew up fine, and they're best friends, and so that's what I try to tell people, that this soul-proof evidence, by the way, soul-proof has a dual meaning. First of all, yes, proof that we are souls, spirits, beings of energy, consciousness, whatever term you want to use. But secondly, we each are soul-proof, just like a watch is waterproof or shock-proof. That is, since no one really dies, since we each are one with the one and part of Source right now. That's what people who always come back from near-death experiences say. We're one with God right now, and we're in eternity right now, not maybe someday. When we really get that, that's when we can handle whatever comes along, paralysis or rape or cancer, you name it, because it's all good. Life is eternal.
Do we eventually reach something called perfection?
That's a tough one. The evidence is that some souls choose to merge with the one. In other words, they're tired of having these individual lives, and they just want to stay home all the time and stay in heaven, stay with God. But as we discussed, most souls, and again, no beginning, no end, that's a long time. Most souls like to have different experiences, and that's part of the way Creator learns and grows too. God is not a static phenomenon.
Right. Does this apply to the animals as well?
It appears so. In after-death contacts, we are aware that animals who have passed on make their appearance. Same way that people have near-death experiences. We'll see loved ones greeting them when they enter the light. And so, yes, animals have a consciousness as well. So those listeners who have lost a dear pet, and I know we can get so close to them, death is not a goodbye, just a see you later.
Can a person get so wrapped up in the memories of a loved one that they actually neglect the other living people around them and just focus so long and so hard on the person who died?
Great question, yes. And some people do that, and I caution those, even those who are really into all this soul proof, that the bottom line is living in the here and now, because that's really all we have. And when we really get this information, then we can relax about, am I going to see my loved one again, or is there life after death, because they know it for sure. And then they can relax into this wonderful, beautiful world that we live in, and treat each other the way we can, and have a literal heaven on earth.
You know, when I was a kid, I asked my dad, after we die, we're no longer here and we're dead, right? And my dad said, right, because I was just a little kid, so he was just answering my question. I said, well, before I was here, I wasn't alive either. Was I dead? I remember asking this
Good question.
So, and how I want to apply that here is, assuming that we all started from Adam and Eve or two people, but even if that's not completely true, and I don't know that it's not, but I mean, right now there are 7 billion people on Earth. Not too long ago, there was only 3 billion people on Earth. Where did the other 4 billion souls come from? Were they always out there? And are there infinite numbers of souls that somehow make their way to Earth?
Well, I love it when people ask questions, because you don't have to think for yourself very long before you see some major holes in things we were taught. That's why I went to theology school, in part, to find sensible answers to the questions I had had since I was a kid. For example, Adam and Eve. I asked, my Sunday school teacher is still alive. She's like 90 years old, and she still laughs about when I was 6. And I asked her, well, if Adam and Eve are the only people, and they had kids and so on, then how did the different races occur?
Right,
and
right.
She said, oh, I never thought about that. So, infinite number of souls, I don't know about infinite, but lots and lots. You know, there are over 100 billion stars like our sun in our galaxy, the Milky Way, and over 100 billion galaxies like our Milky Way in the known physical universe.
Yeah.
The cosmos is a vast place, so I have no problem with the numbers, and there's certainly enough formed and formless places for souls to hang out.
But I guess maybe the question, just to take another step further, is if souls become living, breathing human beings and then die and then become living, breathing human beings again in reincarnation, then where's the room for the others who've never been living, breathing? Is there such thing as an old soul? Are there some people who've lived here for a very long time, over and over again, and others who just made it here for the first time?
Second question first. Yes.
Yeah.
There are evolved or advanced souls, like we say old souls. For example, when I counsel parents whose children have died, almost invariably they'll say, you know, horrible as this is, it doesn't surprise me. I always had a feeling that my child would pass on early because he or she was wise beyond her years. Her eyes were just, seemed like she took in everything. She was kind to people. She asked great questions. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of good evidence that there is an advancement of souls, just like here on Earth. You know, you have people who are kind of like cavemen, and then people who are like Mother Teresa. But getting back to the first part, souls, first of all, Earth is one of the most unpleasant places to incarnate. It's one of the most difficult places, and also the most potential for growth. But certainly souls would often choose other places, other planets, and then many times it doesn't have to be a physical place. When we do past life regressions, oftentimes people will describe being a place where it's a swirl of energy, a swirl of light. But even when we're just beings of energy, we still have our memories, we have our independent personality. It's not like we just become a bunch of electrons.
God gave everyone free will, and that free will allows people to choose. And some people choose to be atheists, even though there is huge evidence of intelligent design. What happens to the soul of the atheist if they don't believe in intelligent design?
Well, first of all, my conversations with atheists, and I've had more than a few, I find that they're not totally atheists. It's just that they reject the orthodox descriptions of God, God the Father, a big man in the sky who judges and dictates everything. But when I start talking about a force, kind of like in the movies of Star Wars, the Force, a loving intelligence, universal intelligence, they say, yeah, I get that, I believe that. So, but there are some hardcore who say, yeah, when you die, that's it. I say what they will experience is surprise, but being an atheist by no means stops experiencing the afterlife. There's no judgment or penalty for not believing. Like I say, we're in eternity now, and we each are one with the source right now. It's not something we have to believe a certain way or do a certain thing to get into that club.
Dr. Mark Pitstick is our guest. His book is called Soul Proof. There's also a documentary that you can get. I'm not so sure if it's a DVD or a downloadable movie. The movie also called Soul Proof. The subtitle, Compelling Evidence. You are an infinite spiritual energetic being. Give us some of the examples of evidence that you cite in the book.
Well, first of all, most people know about near-death experiences, and I've read about this, where people will see the light and then told it's not their time and they come back. And by the way, these many of those people, about 24%, will have visions of the future that later on come to be true. So we know it's more than just an imaginary experience. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are tens of thousands of documented NDEs, near-death experiences. By documented, I mean this. While the person is clinically dead, their hearts quit beating, they've quit breathing, their brains flatline, their eyes are closed, they're in an ICU or ER unit, their consciousness, soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, hovers above the table, watches the proceedings, after a while gets bored, hovers above the hospital, travels around outside the hospital. Upon successful resuscitation with no exposure to family or friends, no way they can know this information. Otherwise, the patient will tell the doctors and nurses, while you were working on me, I saw what you're doing, and the one doctor dropped his pen and it rolled over by the window. And there's an old red tennis shoe on top of the hospital, and the doors to the roof are locked, and they send the maintenance guys up, and there it is, just as they described.
Oh, wow.
And while I was dead, there was a car wreck, and they describe exactly the color of the cars and the directions and so on. Teams of scientists have investigated this, and they conclude that there is no explanation for how a clinically dead person can accurately perceive events all around them unless indeed consciousness survives independently of the body. By the way, some of these documented near-death experience cases occur among blind people, some of whom have been blind from birth.
Wow. I've always had a question about something here, and let's see. I'm 1 year away since my mom died, and 5 years away since my dad died, and maybe 40 years since my grandfather died. Okay. So this just, again, she's suspending any disbelief so that we can have this conversation without arguing or debating it, just looking at it and asking questions of somebody who's written about it, which is Dr. Mark Pitstick. Is it possible that when we communicate with somebody who has passed on, and they've been gone 40 years, is it possible that we're actually communicating with somebody who's already living again, and maybe we're communicating with their spirit while they're sleeping or something? Like, can you still communicate with Abraham Lincoln, or somebody who's been dead long enough that maybe they came back already?
Mm-hmm.
Super questions. First of all, this is from Brian Royce, who I spent a week with training in Florida. He's pretty much the pioneer of past life regression and the former chairperson, by the way, of Mount Sinai Psychiatry Department. He says in his experience, the average soul reincarnates about 200 Earth years later. So if a person's 40 years older or has been past 40 years, it's likely they haven't reincarnated yet. However, if they can, yes, their consciousness can still communicate with you. It could be there when you have a near-death experience or die and be there to greet you. In other words, research suggests that only about 15% of who you are, your essence, is in this body. The other is somewhere else right now in what we call parallel universes, simultaneous realities. Some of it never leaves home. Some of it never leaves God.
I hope I'm having fun. I hope the other half, or the other 85% is having fun.
Larry had a news story the other day about a young lady who was 16. She all of a sudden went into a coma, never woke up. 40 years later, she died.
Yeah.
What happened to her soul in that interim? I mean, in that 40 years?
Well, the soul doesn't just sit around for 40 years. You can imagine how boring that would be. So she is one who would have one foot in both worlds. Her body was still here on earth, but her consciousness likely was in a different realm, visiting, traveling back and forth. So there's not the suffering that we think. The consciousness disengages, by the way, before a traumatic injury and certainly during a long vegetative state like that. So those who have a loved one like that needn't worry that their soul is suffering or bored to death.
Oh, okay.
I have one experience I'll share with you from when I was 4 years old. I've shared it with our listeners many times before, and I was reluctant to tell anybody this for a very, very, very long time. But when I was 4 years old, I saw an angel, just cut to the chase. And the angel did not give me any big revelation about the world or about life, the meaning of life or anything like that. The angel told me where my keys were. Now, remember, I'm a 4-year-old. I don't really have keys that work anything. I had keys that were just playthings. They were just something my mom or dad gave to me just to kind of play with. And I lost them. And an angel, I'm telling you, I could swear on a Bible that this is true. What I saw was like a patch of fog. What I heard was a pretty female voice. I mean, the voice was pretty. I couldn't see, but it was a female voice. And the female voice said, "Your keys are on the dresser." Simple as that. I went to the dresser, got them, didn't even think twice about this, thinking it was unusual, figured there was nothing different than somebody else telling me. Went to my mom, who was making spaghetti, and I said, "Hey, Mom, an angel just told me where my keys were." And my mom said, "Oh, that's nice." But and that was it. I never thought about it at all. Now, when I thought about it was years later when my dad had a bleeding ulcer and he almost died. And he was a policeman, and he was moonlighting as a custodian at a church. Well, the church pastor, my dad was, he believed in God, but he wasn't a super religious man, at least not outwardly. He reported after he was well again that when he was in the bed in the hospital, now this is my story from 4 years old. This is now 12 years later, so I was about 16, I guess. So my dad's lying in the bed. The pastor for the church he worked at came and said a prayer, and my dad reported seeing an angel with the pastor. And that got my attention. I said, "What did the angel look like?" He said, "Nothing, like a patch of fog." And I said, "Wow, that's the same description I would have." And I said, "What did the angel sound like?" And he said he didn't hear anything. But my point is, my dad would have never said he saw an angel. My dad was one of those down-to-earth New York policeman guys. He would have never said, and neither would I. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be telling you this just to try to wow you. And I've told this story, Robin knows, I've told this hundreds of times. So there's my little angel story. So I believe that they exist. I just don't know how to contact them willingly.
Well, first of all, what you're describing, Larry, I group in the 9th category, which are called first-hand experiences. And if you ask around, almost everybody's had them. But like you say, some people are reluctant to share them for fear of being considered kooky and crazy. But if almost all of them have them, of course it's not. And that category alone is very exciting because it points to there is much more to life than meets the eye, allows us to relax now and enjoy this wonderful world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that is the message of Christmas, isn't it? Is that, we have, there's hope. I think that's one of the big points of the whole Christmas message. And any message, really, that talks about God and hope after a hope of, life is so short, It
is, and we're so lucky to have
I just
you.
love this conversation. I'm disappointed I looked at the clock and we have to wrap it up. But, all right, I have a copy of the book. It's called Soul Proof. I would like to give it away. If you call me right now, it's yours. 622-WOCA is the number. Doctor, can you give us information on how we can buy the book?
Yes, first of all, it's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. But if your listeners buy it off our Soul Proof website, that's soulproof.com, and mention in the ordering process your show, they will get a free copy of the documentary film. That's a 93-minute DVD movie where we interviewed experts and lots of people who had these 9 categories of evidence. So again, soulproof.com can order the book. Also, they visit there, They can get lots of free articles, free newsletter, and free special reports.
Okay, let me give this one away. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
Well, this is Gary.
Gary, do you know where we are?
Yes, I do. And this is why I like this radio station. You have the most interesting people on here. This is unbelievable.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. The book will be waiting for you here at the station. We're at the Paddock Mall now, okay?
Correct.
Just so you know. Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Right. Bye-bye.
And thank you for the compliment, too, by the way. And thank you, Doctor. What a fascinating conversation. The book, again, Soul Proof, the Dr. Mark Pitstick, Pitstick, and the website soulproof.com. Thank you, Doctor.
Well, thank you both for sharing this information with others, and let's do it again.
Definitely, let's do it again. You're definitely welcome. All right. Gosh, I have so many more questions. We'll take a little break, though. We'll be right back.
On the next Voice of Ocala, it's Trivionator Tuesday with Tom. It's your chance to go up against me to win great prizes from the Ocala Golf Club, the Country Club of Silver Spring Shores, Mojo's Grill and Catering Company. All you have to do is outduel me in trivia. Plus, it's Around the Water Cooler with Tom James, Buddy Martin, myself, and JJ LaSalva as we talk the hot topics in sports. Do you think the Bowl Championship Series game may come up? I think so. All that more on the next Voice of Ocala, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, WOCA, The Source.
Hi, Robin. You look tired.
I am. I've been running all over town.
Why? Why not drive?
I need to get this stupid document notarized.
Well, that's easy. You need personal service.
Duh, that's what I've been looking for.
You need to go see Mark at the Personal Service Center. He can notarize that for you, make copies, fax it wherever, or send it out in the mail. Heck, he can even scan it and email it for you.
Really? Where is he at?
2375 Northeast 25th Avenue, on the corner of Northeast 25th Avenue and 24th Street. You can call him at 789-6683.
Personal Service Center. Thanks, Larry.